In today's field note, I want to actually share with you the why behind going back into portrait photography and what that journey has been like. Over the last 6 months, I took a hiatus from income earning while I relocated, re-established myself after major life changes, which I've spoken about before, so I won't go into too much detail now. But what's important about that is I've spent that 6 months exploring and discovering and just delving into deepening some skills that I wanted to expand on. But one of the things that I've been doing during this period of exploration and discovery is working with a personal trainer to increase my strength and agility. The personal training that I do is holistic based and primal based, which aligns beautifully with my own way of being and ethos in life. And the wellness centre that I do it at is owned and run by 2 brothers, but they co-host retreats with other facilitators who, again, are purpose-led, intentional business owners that work in holistic practices. And I offered these 2 brothers to have a portrait shoot done because I love their offerings so much. Every time I would send a link to their website of what they offer to people to recommend that they utilise their services too, I kept looking at their portrait, their profile photo, and thinking it just does not capture the depth of their wisdom and what it is that they offer as a service and an experience in the wellness centre. After a few years of coaching small business owners through a government program, working with people on their digital tools and their online presence, I came across this a lot, where the images of the people that I was coaching didn't really represent who they are or where they're at in their business journey. Like these personal trainers, they also could look like they didn't carry the wisdom that they had gathered in the years that they'd been offering their service and even working through their own personal transformation journey. So as a portrait photographer, that being my very first business that I had, it's really hard not to look at these photos and just think, I could actually help people with that. And so I offered these personal trainers to do a session and thought that it would be a simple matter of getting my camera back off my youngest son, who I'd left that camera with, and just buying a new lens. I just said I just need to buy a new lens because my favourite lens that I used to use for portrait photography I had sold, and so I just wanted to get another lens. What I didn't realise or really take much notice of over the last few years was that Nikon had actually changed the lens mount on their cameras. And so for me to actually get that lens for my Nikon camera, I needed to either buy a new camera or buy a second-hand lens. And I'm not against buying second-hand equipment, but I wanted to be able to see it in person if I was going to buy it. And I could only find one in Victoria and another one in Queensland. And so that wasn't a viable option to get something in the next, few weeks at that time. And so I decided to do some research on, okay, if I bought a whole new camera kit, what would I get? Where would I want to take my photography? Because even though I haven't been working as a specific portrait photographer over the last 15 years, I have still utilised my photography in all of my work. And I have worked with people, photographing them like products and on customers, and then giving them a portrait of the products that they had bought in store, and they get a portrait from that, and I got some promotional imagery out of it. And so when I really looked at what is it I actually want in a camera, I started to think I wanted something that I could also capture great video content with, as well as be a great portrait photography camera. But I also didn't want it to be too heavy and bulky and not be able to, say, travel overseas with it if I decided to do that. So I went on this exploration journey of researching what camera I would like to work with, and I decided on the Canon. And I've got a Canon R6 Mark III with a series of lenses that serve my needs, because that was a really important part. I wanted to get equipment that served my need. It was not about having the best on the market for portrait photography, which in the past was how I decided on a camera, because that was my focus, straight portrait, and I just got top of the line what that camera was, and full metal body with the lenses that were appropriate. And so I was like, okay, it's not always about the best. I think about years ago when I was buying a new four-wheel drive, and it was really important to me, one, where the cup holders were little things like cup holders, where the placement of them, how many of them, what size they are, what kind of cup and bottle do they carry, because when I'm driving a car, I need to be able to put my bottle and my cup easily in and out of a cup holder. The other thing was the configuration of the seats. I had 2 kids, and at the time a husband, and we often had friends visiting, and we would go visit wineries, and so we needed to be able to sit up to 7 people in a car, still have boot space to put things in the boot, and then be able to fold the seats down and use it as like a little truck for my market stall. So I approach the camera research in the same way. What am I using it for? It's got to be fit for purpose. It's not about it just being the best according to the technicalities of the camera. So I spent a fair bit of time researching which camera would actually serve my needs specifically. And I ended up buying the Canon with lenses that were appropriate for what I wanted. And then I thought, now I've got to learn a whole new camera. Like going from a Nikon to a Canon was one thing, but a modern day digital camera with different functionalities, different settings, different ways of changing the settings, that left me feeling a little bit like I was a novice. And I was like, I've got many years of portrait photography experience. It's not the photography part that I was unsure about, it was actually working with the camera. And so I did a portrait shoot with my youngest son. He came across and we had a lot of fun doing that. And I've done lots of shoots with the dogs because they move quickly, so I've had to change my settings quickly. But I didn't want to go back to my personal trainers and say, okay, let's just do this shoot with me on this new camera that I'm not really familiar with. And I just didn't feel comfortable doing that. So I decided to write a list of people that are in this area that are a profile of the people I would like to work with if I was to open this up as an income stream again. And from that list, most of whom, I might say, were actually people I'd met through the wellness centre where I do the personal training. And that was really important for me, to actually work with someone who aligns with the client that I would want to serve going forward. So I wanted to take someone through the entire experience. While practicing on my son was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot about the camera and what it could do, and he got to experience me as a portrait photographer like he'd never experienced, because he was only 6 months old when I started my artisanal business and no longer ran portrait photography as a full-time career. And so while that was fun, I really wanted to do this in a way that felt complete, like the complete cycle. So I reached out to this breathwork facilitator, free diver, and she also runs hiking retreats, and I took her through the full process. As a portrait photographer, I never did a shoot without having a consultation with people first and really talking to them about what it is we want to try and capture, because portrait photography for me is more than just taking a photo of someone. It is actually capturing their soul radiance. And so I went through the process of writing down questions, utilising my coaching skills to help understand her business and what she wanted represented in these images, and what purpose those images were going to be used for, not just for a profile photo, but actually for some marketing material that she can create from the imagery as well. And we did a full day session. We did 3 looks, 3 locations, all in one day, starting at sunrise on the beach, her in her diving gear, and then we went into the forest. Actually around here we went into the forest and we had the warrior woman look that we created as her inner essence, as her outer expression imagery. And then we ended hiking up a mountain in Berry, and we did a sunset series at the top of the mountains in low sunlight with cliff faces and tree tops, and just this beautiful expansive experience. And that was amazing to actually go through that. But the thing that I found really interesting was that in the consultation process, she did say that the questions that I asked really got her thinking, not just about the photos, but her business and the clients that she wants to attract in. Like, she already had 3 different client avatars and target audiences in mind, but having the imagery to support connecting with them visually was something she hadn't really considered. So she found that to be valuable, and just even talking about her business in depth with someone. And so that was beautiful to witness. And then on the day itself, working with her as someone who is a mother, and she's a single mother, and motherhood has this way of like taking our bodies through this whole reconfiguration experience. And so there is more often than not body consciousness for women after having children, of course, but this lady had been a model in the past and been photographed as a model in her youth, so she wasn't new to being photographed, but she was new to this way of being photographed. And so I found that to be a really good exercise, to work with someone in that situation and to see the transformation that was taking place while we were taking the photos, seeing her relax into her being and having her soul radiance actually radiate out of her. It was so beautiful to witness and to be a part of. And on top of that, we had so much fun just laughing the whole day throughout the journey. And she kept bringing that up, that, you know, that was good medicine in itself, all the laughing. To be able to relax into being captured like that is a really important thing I like to bring to a session. I don't want people to feel like they have to be stiff and stationary and stagnant to be able to capture them. I want them to be feeling free and flowy and relaxed at any point. And so that was really rewarding to experience that. So actually, and I haven't yet had the shoot with the personal trainers, but that's coming up next week, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what transpires in that session as well. But I've already had their consultation, and it was a similar experience. A consultation is an important part of helping people really think about their business branding, the ethos behind their business, what it is they want their clients to experience while they're in their presence is one thing, but the why, and that is usually represented in the business owner. What it is that they do for themselves, or how is it that they create their own feeling of coherence and living a life in alignment and living a life that they're actually passionate about. Being a purpose-led business owner is not just about how much money you can make, it's actually the impact you can have in the lives of others. And they're the types of people that I actually really want to work with, because there's a flow-on effect. Not only does it flow on to their families because they are living in a way that fulfills them and is rewarding, and they feel like that they're having a positive impact on other people that they work with, but also for the clients. And so there's this flow-on effect. And so me, as someone getting back into portrait photography, working with business owners, representing their brand, that's the little part that I get to play in that bigger picture. Now, for me personally, that journey has been quite interesting because, like I said, I'm getting to know a new camera. And that on the day, even though I had done several practice runs with my son and the dogs, and even just taking photos of anything and everything in various lights and situations to get to know the camera, under that pressure on the day of one-time constraints, because we had 3 locations at 3 different looks, outfit changes in between, starting first thing in the morning when it was quite cold and making sure that the client doesn't get too cold and then not be able to relax in for the rest of the day. Things like that put me under pressure to work out how this camera works. Doing it under that pressure really gave me the opportunity to sort out and learn some of the things about this camera quickly, how the functions work, how the sensor works. I didn't even realize that the screen, I could actually take photos by touching the screen. That is something my old camera couldn't do. And I started out as a film photographer to begin with and got into digital photography right at those early stages when the DSLR was very new in the industry. So the difference between then and now, and the changes in technology, is quite phenomenal. So being under pressure on the day, trying to make sure I still capture beautiful images of this lady, because she was investing her time and giving me the opportunity to provide her with her brand story in images. This wasn't just about getting a friend to play in front of a camera for me. It was still a valuable exchange taking place of energy. I still wanted her to get the outcome that a paying client would get, because she was investing her time, energy and trust in me. And I didn't take that lightly, so it was really important that I still captured the imagery that represented what we were after. And so it was such a learning experience and a great journey. And by the end of that day, I felt this sense of reward and completeness. As we were driving back from the last location, I just felt this real sense of satisfaction. I felt like I knew, not only that I knew I'd captured the images that I wanted to capture, that wanted to come through in that day, but I also knew I was on the right track, doing what actually aligns with me personally and what's in service to the client. And that's a really big thing for me to experience right now, because like I said, I didn't expect necessarily to get back into portrait photography. It wasn't a career I left because I didn't love it. It was a career that I left behind because I did become burnt out as a new mum, and a mother who was actually wishing to have more children and was unable to at the time because of the stress that I was under. I was working very long hours, travelling long distances, and then editing photos into the night and consulting, and it was quite an intense period of my life, and I couldn't have a second child. The stress was too great, and so I ended up letting go of the photography for that reason. And so going back to it was, it almost felt like, am I just going back to what's familiar, or am I actually going back to what I'm passionate about? So I did some coaching sessions with my coach, myself, to actually unpack that before investing, first of all, in a whole new camera kit and going down the path of formulating this process that will enable me to support other business owners in their journey. At the point that I was doing this, I still wasn't necessarily convinced that this would become an income stream. It was just, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to put the foundations down first. I'm going to lay them down properly before I start offering it. And for me to feel like I'm doing something with integrity and in alignment with what it is that I'm here to do, how I'm here to serve. But going through that process of the coaching, I discovered that I actually, letting go of the photography, like I said, was not because I didn't love it. I realised how much I loved it. As soon as I picked up this camera and started photographing, not just the dogs, but when I was photographing my son, that experience took me into the remembrance of why I loved portrait photography in the first place, and because it just felt like a natural fit for who I am, how I see the world, how I see the people in front of me, because I don't necessarily just see a form and a figure and a face. I see their soul essence, and I want that to come through in the imagery. So doing that with my son was one thing, and then having this experience with someone who I'd only recently met, didn't know to the depth that I know my son, didn't even know to the depth that I know my personal trainers. Even though I've only known them for a few months, I still know them a lot more than this lady. But going through that experience of working with her and capturing these images, that I just felt so complete at the end of this shoot, and I hadn't even fully seen the photos properly, I've just seen them on the camera. It just took me into that. This is it. This is a part of what I'm here to do. I could just feel it. Now, I still love designing and making products and handcrafting. And the beautiful thing about this shoot is I got to actually include some of what I make in the shoot. So this whole journey has been one of defining and refining my directions going forward. I feel like there's so much more clarity now about what I want to do going forward in this next leg of my life's journey. And it's not all just to do with photography, but it is definitely to do with inner essence as outer expression, capturing the beauty of living, which is actually infused into my artisanal work as well. And that's infused into my coaching, because my coaching was about people living in alignment and looking after their health and well-being as well as the health of their business. It's that combination of everything. So it's going to be interesting to experience this going forward, and I look forward to sharing more with you on this. I will do some more field notes sharing more about this shoot, but I just wanted to give you first of all this introductory to the why behind how I got back into my portrait photography, and specifically working with businesses and representing their brand, their personal brand and their business brand, and making sure that their soul radiance comes through that as well. So I'm going to close with reading a journal entry that I wrote, which sums up beautifully what this experience has been like. This is what it looks like when a woman who has spent a lifetime seeing the soul radiance in others finally picks up the camera again and says, yes, this is mine to offer once again, and I am ready to offer it completely, entwining other skills into this as an experience that goes beyond being captured by my lens.